The forbidden signal, the laboratory was quiet that night. The only sound was the soft hum of computers and the faint ticking of a clock on the wall. Outside, the sky was black and full of stars. It was almost midnight when Ethan, a young human scientist, leaned back in his chair and rubbed his tired eyes. He had been working for hours, staring at the screen, waiting for something, anything to happen. For months, he had been listening to deep space signals. He believed that one day, humans would hear something that no one had ever heard before. Something not from Earth. Ethan smiled to himself and shook his head. Maybe tonight is not the night either, he whispered and reached for his coffee. But just then, his computer screen flickered. He froze. A strange static sound filled the room. The monitor turned black for a second, then white. Lines of unknown symbols flashed on the screen. Ethan leaned forward, his heart beating faster. He had never seen anything like this before. The sound grew louder. It wasn't just static anymore. It was a whisper. Don't watch, human. Ethan's hands stopped on the keyboard. He looked around the room, confused. What was that? He said softly, though no one was there to answer. The whisper came again, clearer this time. Don't watch, human. Then the screen turned back to normal, as if nothing had happened. Ethan sat still, staring at the computer. His coffee had grown cold in his hand. He felt a chill on the back of his neck. Slowly, he opened the folder where all incoming signals were saved. There it was, a single file, marked only with strange alien letters. His fingers hovered over the mouse. He clicked. A video began to play. At first, the screen was dark. Then a faint light appeared, showing a strange figure in the shadows. It was a tall, thin alien in shining armor, with a helmet that covered its face. The alien stood very still, then slowly raised its head. Ethan leaned closer to the screen, his breath shallow. The alien looked directly into the camera. For a moment, its strange eyes seemed to glow behind the visor. Then it spoke in a soft, trembling voice. Don't watch, human. Its voice was almost a whisper, but full of fear. Ethan could not look away. The alien took a step forward. Its armor made a faint sound, like metal rubbing against metal. Then it stopped and lowered its head, as if ashamed. You are not supposed to see this, the alien whispered again. Not yet. Suddenly, the video cut to static. The screen turned black. Ethan blinked, his heart racing. He quickly opened the file again, but it was gone. The folder was empty now, as though nothing had ever been there. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the blank screen. What just happened? He said to himself. The lights above him flickered. The computers around him beeped, and then went quiet. Even the ticking of the clock seemed to stop. For a few seconds, the lab was completely silent. Then Ethan heard another sound. It was coming from outside the lab door. A soft, metallic sound like footsteps. He stood up slowly, his chair scraping the floor behind him. Hello? He called out, his voice shaky. No answer. The sound came closer. Step by step, Ethan took a deep breath and walked toward the door. His hand trembled as he reached for the handle. Suddenly, the lights went out completely. Darkness swallowed the room. He stood there, frozen, listening. Then, in the darkness, he heard the whisper again. Closer this time. Don't watch, human. He spun around, but there was no one there. Just the darkness and the whispering. The air in the room grew colder, and Ethan felt as though someone or something was standing right behind him. He turned back to the door and yanked it open, but the hallway outside was empty. The lights there were dim, flickering slightly. He stepped out, looking left and right. Nothing. But then, at the very end of the hallway, He thought he saw a shadow move, a tall figure, standing perfectly still in the dark. Ethan squinted, trying to see better. The figure shifted slightly, and, for just a second, the light caught on something shiny armor, the same armor he had seen in the video. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The figure raised a hand, very slowly, and pointed at him. Then, in that same soft whisper, it spoke. Again, you weren't supposed to see me, human. The lights flickered one last time, and the figure vanished. Ethan stood there alone, his heart pounding, staring into the empty hallway. Whatever had just happened, he knew one thing for sure. He was no longer alone, and he was certain of something. Even more terrifying, the alien had not come by accident. It had come for him. Asterisk the first contact. Ethan did not sleep that night. He sat in his dark lab for hours, staring at the blank computer screen. The words kept echoing in his mind. Don't watch, human. And the image of that strange, armored figure pointing at him refused to leave his thoughts. Even when the sun rose outside, the chill in the room remained. When morning came, he forced himself to leave the lab and walk home. The streets were quiet, the air heavy with summer heat, but Ethan felt like every shadow was watching him. Every passerby who glanced at him seemed to know something. When he reached his apartment, he locked the door behind him and shut all the curtains. He sat on the couch and pulled out his phone to check the files. Again, nothing. The folder where the strange signal had been saved was empty. There was no trace of the video, no record of the signal, no proof that anything had happened. He sighed and rubbed his face. Maybe it was just a dream, he muttered to himself. But just then, his phone vibrated in his hand. It wasn't a message. It was. The video. The screen lit up and played by itself, and this time the whisper was louder. If you keep watching, I will come. Ethan dropped the phone. The screen cracked as it hit the floor, but the video kept playing. The alien was closer, now filling the screen. Its helmet reflected faint blue light, and its strange eyes glowed faintly behind the visor. It spoke again, this time more urgently. You should not have seen me. Human, stop looking. Then the screen went black. Ethan backed away slowly, his breath uneven. Before he could pick the phone up again, a strange noise came from the kitchen. It was faint at first, like wind rattling the window, but then it became clearer, metallic, sharp and deliberate. Footsteps. Ethan froze. The sound grew louder. Step. He grabbed the nearest thing, a flashlight, and crept toward the kitchen. When he pushed the door open, the room was empty. But the back door, which he always kept locked, was now wide open. Cold air rushed in through the gap, and standing just outside in the shadow of the alley was her. The alien, the shy warrior. Ethan stared, unable to speak. Her armor gleamed faintly in the morning light, though parts of it were scratched and cracked. She stood there silently, almost as though she were afraid of him. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then she whispered, her voice almost lost in the wind. You weren't supposed to see me, human. Ethan stepped back into the kitchen, and she followed, moving so quietly it was almost unnatural. Now that she was closer, he could see her better. She was tall and thin, but not weak. The armor covered most of her body, but her hands were bare. Long fingers, faintly glowing markings etched into her skin. Her helmet tilted down slightly, as though she were ashamed to look at him. Who are you? Ethan asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. The alien didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to the corner of the room and stood there, her hands clasped together, her eyes fixed on the floor. After a moment, she spoke softly. I am nothing. You should forget me. Ethan shook his head. But you're real. You're here. Why me? Why are you here? The alien's hands tightened. Her helmet tilted slightly, as though she were listening to something far away. Then she said, almost to herself, "Because you kept watching, and now it's too late to stop." She finally lifted her head, and for the first time, Ethan saw. Her eyes clearly through the visor, a deep, bright silver, glowing faintly. "They will come," she said, her voice trembling. "My people, they will erase you and me." "Erase?" Ethan repeated, confused. "What do you mean, erase? You mean kill?" The alien flinched at the word. "Worse," she whispered. "They will make it so you never existed. Not even a memory left behind." Ethan felt a cold wave of fear wash over him. He stepped closer to her. "Then why are you here? Why warn me?" "If you're one of them?" The alien looked up sharply, almost angrily. "I am not one of them anymore," she said, her voice louder now. Then she took a step back, as if realizing she had spoken too much. For the first time, Ethan noticed her armor was damaged, cracked in several places, faint glowing scars on. The metal, and her movements? They were slow, heavy. She was hurt. "You're injured," Ethan said. "You need help." But she shook her head quickly. "No. Humans cannot help me. You cannot even help yourself." She turned toward the door, but Ethan blocked her path. "Wait. You can't just show up, say all this, and leave. Who are you? What's your name?" The alien stopped, her shoulders tense. "My name," she whispered, as though tasting the words for the first time. Then she shook her head and said quietly, "Names don't matter. Not when you're about to be erased." Suddenly, the room grew colder. The lights above flickered and dimmed. The alien's head snapped toward the window. "They're already here," she said, almost to herself. Before Ethan could react, a strange light appeared outside. Bright, white, and pulsing. Shadows moved in the alley, fast and sharp, like blades cutting through the air. The alien turned back to him and whispered, "Stay behind me, human. Don't move. Don't speak. And whatever happens, don't watch." Her visor darkened, and she stepped in front of him, her armor humming faintly as though powering up. Outside, the shadows grew closer. Ethan's heart pounded. And as the first figure stepped into the doorway, tall, silent, and shining, Ethan realized with terror that this was only the beginning. The real hunt had begun. The shy warrior. The room was alive with light. The alien shadows outside moved like living knives, their edges sharp and glowing faintly in the darkness. Ethan pressed himself against the wall, his breath uneven, his body trembling, as the strange hum filled the air, and she, the shy warrior, stood between him and the doorway, her back straight despite the cracks in her armor. Her hand reached to her side, and a strange weapon unfolded, long, curved, and made of the same faintly glowing metal as her armor. "Don't move," she whispered without looking at him. Ethan swallowed hard and nodded, though she couldn't see him. Then the first shadow stepped inside. It was not fully solid. Its body was tall and thin, like her, but its face was hidden in shifting smoke. It didn't walk so much as it glided across the floor, silent but full of menace. She raised her weapon and spoke in a sharp voice, her words not meant for Ethan. "I told you, this one is mine." The shadow hissed, its sound like wind cutting. Through broken glass. It moved closer, ignoring her words. Ethan could feel the air in the room getting colder with every step the shadow took. His breath came out in faint clouds now. His fingers numbed. The shy warrior took a deep breath, her shoulders stiffening. Then she moved, faster than his eyes could follow. She leapt forward, her blade slicing through the air with a blinding flash. Shadow shrieked and staggered back, a faint crack in its smoke-like form. But more were coming. Ethan could see them now. 4. No, 5 shapes slipping into the room, surrounding her. She spun, blocking strikes he couldn't even see, her armor taking hit after hit, faint sparks flying where the shadows struck her. Her breathing was heavy now, but she didn't stop. She whispered under her breath as she fought, words he couldn't understand. But even through the fear, Ethan saw something strange. She wasn't just fighting them. She was protecting him. Every time a shadow darted toward Ethan, she threw herself in its path, her blade flashing, her body shuddering under the blows. For the first time, Ethan noticed she was not as strong as them. Her movements slowed slightly. Her armor cracked again at the shoulder, a faint silver liquid leaking through. Her blade began to flicker, its light dimming. One of the shadows struck her hard, and she fell to one knee. Ethan's breath caught, but she lifted her head, her visor, cracking slightly, and hissed at the shadows, a sound so full of defiance that even the shadows stopped for a moment. Then she rose again, her blade glowing brighter than before, but it was clear she couldn't hold them off forever. Ethan's mind raced. What could he do? He looked around the room. Nothing but broken chairs, his cracked phone, and the faint light spilling in from the alley. Then he noticed something strange. The shadows avoided the light. Whenever the morning sunlight touched the floor, the shadows pulled back slightly, their edges fraying. Ethan's heart thud. He grabbed the curtain and yanked it aside. Bright light flooded the room, and the shadows shrieked in unison, recoiling into the corners. The shy warrior glanced back at him. Surprised, clever, she whispered breathlessly, then spun back to face the attackers. But even weakened, the shadows did not leave. One of them shot forward and slammed into her chest, sending her crashing into the wall. Her helmet fell off. Ethan froze. For the first time, he saw her face. She was beautiful, but strange. Her skin was pale and faintly glowing, marked with faint silver scars that ran like rivers under her skin. Her eyes, those bright, silver eyes, were full of pain, but also determination. She turned her face away quickly, covering it with her hand. "Don't watch," she whispered, almost ashamed. But Ethan couldn't stop staring. Even hurt, even surrounded, she stood up again, her blade trembling in her hand. The shadows hissed louder, closing in again, and then she spoke in a language that made the air shiver. Words that didn't belong in this world. The shadows froze. Her body glowed faintly now, brighter and brighter, as if she were burning from the inside out. Ethan covered his eyes as the light grew too strong to bear. When he opened them again, the shadows were gone. The room was quiet once more. She stood in the center of the room, her blade sunk into the floor, her chest rising and falling heavily. But now, without her helmet, without her defenses, she looked smaller. Vulnerable. Ethan stepped closer. "You saved me," he said softly. She didn't look at him. Instead, she pulled her cracked armor tighter around her, as though trying to hide herself. "You should not have seen that," she whispered. "You should not have seen me." Ethan shook his head. "But I did. And you protected me." "Why?" She was silent for a long time. Then she whispered, almost too soft to hear, "Because I didn't want you to be erased. Not like the others." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Others? What do you mean?" She closed her eyes. "You're not the first human to see me," she admitted. "But you are the first one still alive." The words hung in the air like a heavy weight. Ethan felt cold all over. But before he could speak, she stumbled slightly, her knees buckling. He caught her just before she fell. She was warm, almost too warm, and her strange silver blood was staining his hands. She looked up at him weakly, her silver eyes shimmering with something he couldn't quite name. "Don't watch," she whispered again, her voice fading. "But don't let go." Her head dropped against his chest. Outside, in the alley, faint shadows stirred again, and Ethan realized, with a deep, sinking feeling, that this fight was far from over. Asterisk. The chase begins. The streets were empty. Ethan ran through them with the shy warrior in his arms, her body growing heavier with each step. Her armor was cracked, her faint silver blood dripping onto the pavement, leaving glowing spots behind them. He didn't know where he was going, only that he couldn't stop, because behind him, in the darkness, the shadows followed. They didn't make any sound, no footsteps, no breath. Just that faint, sharp hum in the air, and a coldness that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. He risked a glance over his shoulder, and there they were, 4 of them, moving silently, their smoky forms twisting around the edges of the buildings, their glowing eyes fixed on him. Ethan's chest burned from running, but he tightened his hold on her and pushed forward. "You need to wake up," he whispered down at her. "You have to tell me where to go, what to do." But she didn't answer. Her eyes stayed closed, her breathing shallow. He turned a corner and ducked into an alley, pressing his back to the wall, trying to catch his breath. The shadows didn't follow right away. He could feel them searching, like invisible hands reaching. Through the streets, trying to find him, the shy warrior stirred faintly in his arms. Her silver eyes opened just a little, and she whispered, barely loud enough to hear, "You should leave me." "Human, not a chance," Ethan muttered. "They are coming," she said weakly. "They will not stop." "Then neither will I," Ethan replied, gripping her tighter. She gave a faint, bitter smile, then her eyes slipped closed again. Ethan looked around desperately. At the far end of the alley, he saw a rusted metal door. He ran to it, kicked it open, and slipped inside. It was some kind of abandoned warehouse, huge and empty, full of dust and broken glass. He laid her down gently on an old table and tore off his jacket, pressing it to a deep crack in her armor where silver blood leaked out. "Just stay with." He whispered, but outside, he could already hear it, the faint hiss of the shadows growing closer. They had found him? Ethan's hands shook. He grabbed a metal pipe from the floor, though he knew it wouldn't help. Then she spoke again, her voice soft but firmer this time. "My ship," she whispered. Ethan leaned closer. "What? Where?" Her fingers twitched and pointed weakly. Toward the far corner of the warehouse. Ethan followed her gesture and noticed something strange. A faint blue glow seeping through the cracks in the wall. He ran to it and pulled away. The boards behind them was a hidden door. He pushed it open. And there it was, a ship small, sleek and otherworldly, resting on a circle of cracked concrete, faint blue light pulsing along its sides. Ethan's mouth fell open, but before he could move, the temperature dropped again. They had arrived. The shadows slipped through the cracks. In the walls like black smoke, tall and silent, their glowing eyes fixed on him. Ethan froze. Then, behind him, he heard her voice, stronger now. "Go," she said. "Get me." To the ship. Ethan didn't hesitate. He ran back, lifted her into his arms again, and sprinted toward the hidden chamber. The shadows moved faster now. One of them lashed out, a tendril of black smoke slashing across his shoulder, burning like ice. He stumbled, but didn't stop. Another shadow darted in front of him, blocking the way. But before it could strike, she raised her hand from his arms and spoke a single word. The shadow shrieked and exploded into thin air. Ethan didn't look back. He reached the ship, his heart pounding, and pressed his hand to the smooth surface. To his surprise, the door slid open with a faint hiss. Inside, the ship was small but full of light, strange symbols glowing on the walls, the air warm and humming faintly. He laid her down on a narrow bench and her hands immediately touched the controls. Close. The door, she whispered. Ethan slammed his hand on the glowing panel. The door shut just as the first shadow reached it. For a moment, everything was silent, and the ship shuddered as something slammed against it from outside. Her silver eyes opened fully now, and she sat up, her hands flying over the controls. The ship roared to life. The floor vibrating beneath them got outside. The shadows howled and struck at the ship, but their blows bounced off harmlessly now. "Hold on," she said quietly. Ethan grabbed the edge of the bench as the ship lifted off. Through the small window, he watched as the warehouse shrank below them, the city lights stretching out like a grid. But even up here, he could still see them. The shadows. Not just four now, dozens, hundreds, climbing the sides of buildings. Slipping through streets, their glowing eyes all fixed on the ship. "They won't stop," Ethan said softly, realizing it. She nodded faintly, her fingers still moving over the strange symbols. "No," she said. "They won't. So what?" "Now?" Her silver eyes glanced at him, and for the first time, he saw something else there, a quiet determination. "Now," she said, her voice steady, "we run." And the ship shot upward, breaking through the clouds, leaving the city and the shadows behind. But even as the earth faded below them, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were still out there, waiting, watching, and the shy warrior, though silent now, gripped the controls tighter, as if she knew exactly how far they'd have to run, and what they would face next. The falling armor. The ship soared through the darkness of space, faster than Ethan thought possible. The stars outside the window blurred into streaks of white light, and the faint hum of the engines filled the silence. But inside the ship, everything felt heavy. Ethan sat quietly on the narrow bench, his hands resting on his knees, still trying to catch his breath. She, the shy warrior, sat at the controls, her back straight, her helmet lying on the floor beside her. Her silver eyes stared ahead, unblinking, as if she could already see what waited for them beyond the stars. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, Ethan found his voice. "They can follow us here, can't they?" he asked quietly. Her hands froze on the controls for just a moment. Then she nodded, "Yes," she whispered, "but not right away. They need time to find a way past the light." "The light?" Ethan repeated. "The stars," she said softly. "Your sun? It burns them, but they always find a way." Ethan swallowed hard, staring at her. Her face was pale, and her silver blood still stained the cracks in her armor. "You're hurt," he said. "I'm fine," she replied quickly, almost defensively. But as she said it, her hands trembled slightly, and her shoulders slumped. Ethan stood and walked closer. "You're not fine," he said. "Let me help you." She glanced at him, her eyes sharp for a moment, but then the fight seemed to leave her, and she looked away. "I don't know." "If you can," she murmured. But Ethan was already reaching for the strange clasps at her shoulder. "What are you doing?" she asked softly. "Getting this armor off," he said. "You're bleeding under it. It's not protecting you anymore." "No," she started, but then stopped. Her voice fading. Ethan carefully undid the broken clasps and began removing the heavy pieces of metal. Each piece fell to the floor with a dull clang, revealing more of her strange, faintly glowing skin beneath. He froze when he saw her back. It was covered in long, deep scars, not fresh, but still glowing faintly, as if they had never truly healed. Some marks looked like burns, others like cuts from something sharp. It was clear she had been fighting for a long time. "These?" Ethan whispered, unable to stop himself. "These aren't just from tonight, are they?" She shook her head slightly. "No," she whispered. "They are from before." "How long?" he asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she sat there quietly, staring at the floor, her hands resting on her knees. Ethan set down the last piece of armor and knelt in front of her. "Why?" he asked softly. "Why keep fighting? Why protect someone like me?" Her silver eyes lifted to his at last. And for the first time, he saw something more than just fear or determination in them. He saw guilt. "Because," she said slowly, "I was supposed to watch. Not feel, not care, just watch." She swallowed hard. "But I disobeyed." Ethan frowned. "Disobeyed who?" Her eyes darkened. "Them," she whispered. "The Watchers. My kind. They don't feel. They only erase." "But you're one of them," Ethan said. "Not anymore," she said quietly. And for the first time, Ethan truly understood. She wasn't just running from the shadows. She was running from her own people. The room fell silent again, except for the soft hum of the ship. Then something outside caught his eye. A faint shadow moved across the window, fast and sharp, like a blade of darkness cutting through the stars. Ethan's stomach dropped. "They're here," he whispered. Her head snapped up. Her silver eyes narrowed. "They're early," she murmured, her voice trembling now. The ship shuddered violently as something struck it from outside. Ethan stumbled, grabbing the edge of the bench. "What do we do?" He shouted over the sound of the alarms, but she didn't answer. Instead, she stood, her body glowing faintly now, her bare skin shimmering in the dim light. Ethan watched as she placed a hand on the wall of the ship. It glowed under her touch, symbols appearing in the metal. She closed her eyes, and for a moment the ship stopped shaking. Then she turned to him, her expression unreadable. "There's a place," she said, "farther than they can follow. But the path is dangerous." Ethan nodded quickly. "Then take us there," he said. She hesitated. Then, in a voice softer than before, she whispered, "If we go, you may not come back, not as you are now." Ethan met her eyes. "Then let's go anyway," he said. Something in her gaze shifted, a quiet respect perhaps, or something deeper, but she only nodded. She returned to the controls and placed both hands on the glowing symbols. The ship lurched forward, faster than before, stars streaking past like rivers of light. But outside the window, Ethan could still see them. The shadows were clinging to the ship now, dozens of them, their black forms twisting and tearing at the hull. Then, with a sound like thunder, the ship broke through into something else. The stars outside bent and twisted, the light turning strange and alive, as though they were falling not through space, but through some hidden place between worlds. Ethan clung to the bench, his body heavy, his breath stolen by the strange pressure. And the shy warrior, her body glowing brighter and brighter, began to crack. Not just her armor. Now, her skin. Tiny lines of silver light spread across her arms, her neck, her face. Her breathing grew louder, more strained. Ethan moved to her side, grabbing her arm. "What's happening to you?" he shouted. She didn't look at him. Instead, she whispered, "This is what happens when you run from them too long." Pieces of her skin flaked away, glowing like ash, falling to the floor. But she didn't stop. Her hands stayed on the controls, her silver eyes fixed ahead, even as her body betrayed her. Ethan grabbed her other arm, holding her steady. "Don't," he said firmly. "Don't let go. Don't fall." For the first time, she looked at him, her cracked lips curling into the faintest smile, and she whispered something he barely heard over the roar of the ship. Then, "Don't watch." The ship tore through the last layer of light, and everything went silent. Outside the windows was no longer black space. It was something else, vast and bright, with strange shapes moving in the distance, and a golden light that made Ethan's eyes ache. But inside the ship, The shy warrior collapsed to her knees. Her armor lay in pieces on the floor. Her skin glowed like fire, and her quiet voice broke the silence one last time. You were never supposed to see this, human. Never. Her body shivered, her fingers slipping from the controls, and in the eerie, golden light of this strange new place, Ethan realized something terrifying. He didn't know if she was dying or transforming into something else. And he didn't know which was worse. The truth revealed the golden light outside the ship did not fade. It was not sunlight, not any light Ethan had ever seen. It moved like liquid, alive and shifting, filling the windows with strange, shimmering shapes, some almost human, others vast and impossible to describe. Ethan sat on the floor of the ship, staring out at the impossible sky, unable to look away. Yet the real terror was behind him. She was still kneeling at the controls, her armor now completely gone, her skin cracked and glowing like molten silver. Her faint breaths came in uneven gasps, and the glow beneath her skin pulsed weakly, as if her life itself was breaking apart. Ethan crawled closer to her, careful not to touch the strange glowing marks spreading across the floor around her. You need to tell me what's happening, he said firmly. Right now. What are you? What are they? Her head lifted slowly. Her silver eyes met his, and for the first time, they no longer looked shy. They looked ancient and full of grief. You were never supposed to come here, she whispered, her voice echoing faintly as if two voices spoke at once. Then why am I here? Ethan demanded. Why save me if you didn't want me to see this? She closed her eyes. Because I made a mistake, she said softly. Ethan sat back, confused. A mistake? She nodded faintly, her fingers trailing over the strange symbols on the floor. The marks glowed brighter where she touched them. My kind were made to watch, she began, her voice weak but steady now. We were the first, long before your kind even learned to stand. We watched the stars. We watched the planets. We watched life grow. Her eyes opened again, glowing brighter now, and her voice hardened. But we were never allowed to touch, never allowed to care. Our task was to erase what grew wrong. Ethan frowned, feeling cold. Erase? He asked, You mean kill? Her lips tightened into something like a bitter smile. No. Worse, she said. To erase means to make it so it never was. To remove it completely from memory, from history, even from time itself. So nothing is left. Ethan felt his chest tighten. The shadows. The way they moved. The way they made everything around them feel empty. It made sense now. Too much sense. But you, he said softly, you didn't erase me. Her eyes dropped to the floor. Double quotes. No, she whispered. I couldn't. He stared at her. Why? Her breath shuddered. Because you looked at me, she said, almost ashamed. You didn't look away. Not like the others. You saw me, not what I was supposed to be, but what I am. Ethan swallowed hard, his thoughts spinning. So what happens now? He asked. Her hands fell to her lap, her strength fading. Now? She murmured. Now, they erase me. And you? Ethan stood quickly, anger rising in his chest. No. No way. If this is what your kind does, then we fight them. We find another way. Her faint smile returned, though her eyes were full of sadness. You don't understand, she said gently. They are not alive. You cannot fight what was never born. You cannot destroy what never existed. Ethan shook his head, refusing to believe it. But then the ship shuddered. Outside, in the strange golden light, the shadows appeared. They moved differently here, bigger, sharper, more real than before. And now there were hundreds, thousands, stretching out across the golden horizon, their black forms cutting through the light like cracks in glass. Ethan backed up toward her, his fists clenched. Then what do we do? He demanded. She lifted her gaze to his, and something strange flashed in her silver eyes, a spark of defiance. We break the rules, she whispered. Before Ethan could ask what she meant, she placed her glowing hand over his chest. A rush of heat spread through him, and suddenly the symbols on the ship's walls flared to life, brighter and hotter than ever. What? He gasped, feeling the strange energy fill his veins. Her voice grew louder, stronger now, as though she was reciting something forbidden. The Watchers cannot erase what is. Bound, she said. You saw me. You chose to see. Now, you cannot be undone. The light from her hand shot into his chest, and for a moment he felt everything. The weight of the stars, the silence of space, the endless loneliness of being watched but never seen. He fell to his knees, clutching his head as the strange knowledge poured into him. When it was over, he looked up at her, breathless. What did you do? He whispered. Her smile was faint but real this time. I made you part of me, she said softly. Now they cannot take you without taking me. And if they take me, they break their own law. The shadows outside howled, their forms twisting violently. The golden light began to crack. The ship shook under the force of their rage. She rose to her feet, though her body looked even more fragile now, her skin nearly translucent, and placed herself in front of one of the window, staring at the endless swarm of shadows. They will come anyway, Ethan said, rising beside her. Yes, she said. So what now? He asked. Her eyes flashed, full of quiet fire. Now, we make them see too. Ethan stood beside her, feeling the strange new energy humming through his body, and for the first time, he understood that the Watcher's power depended on fear, on silence, on no one daring to watch them back. But now, someone had, and that someone was him. Outside the window, the swarm of shadows surged toward the ship like a black ocean, but she, the shy warrior, raised her hands, and the strange golden light wrapped around them both. Watch them, human, she whispered fiercely, and don't look away. And as the shadows struck, the ship exploded in a storm of light, flooding the darkness with something it had never known, resistance. The human's choice, the light was blinding. Ethan shielded his face as the ship cracked apart around them, shards of glowing metal spinning into the golden void. But even through the light and chaos, he could feel her, the shy warrior, standing beside him, her strange energy holding the shadows at bay for just a little longer, but not for long. All around them, the swarm of Watchers closed in. Endless black forms, larger and sharper now, their glowing eyes full of hunger and fury. Their whispers filled the air, louder and louder, until they became a single deafening voice. You cannot win. You cannot fight what was never meant to be. Seen, you will both be erased. Ethan clenched his fists and took a step forward, feeling the strange energy she had given him burn in his chest. For the first time, he wasn't afraid. He turned to her. What do we do? He demanded. Tell me, how do we stop them? Her eyes, now pure silver light, met his. You can't stop them, she said softly. You can only choose. Choose what? Her body shivered as she struggled to stay standing. Her cracked skin glowed brighter now, threatening to break apart completely. You choose what matters, she said. Me or you? Ethan stared at her, confused and angry. What does that even mean? I'm not leaving you here. The Watchers' voices boomed louder, shaking the golden ground beneath them. One of you must stay. One of you must be erased. The shy warrior's hands trembled as she reached out to him. If I stay, she whispered, You go home. You live. You forget this place. You forget me. The Watchers leave you alone. And if I stay? Ethan asked. His voice sharp. Her faint smile returned. Then you take my place, she said. You become what I was. You watch. Forever. Ethan's stomach turned. The thought of forgetting her, of pretending none of this had ever happened, was unbearable. But the thought of becoming what she was, alone, unseen, erasing instead of living. The Watchers began to circle closer, their forms towering now, their whispers growing impatient. Choose, now. The shy warrior's silver eyes softened. Her voice was almost a whisper now. If you go home, you won't remember this, she said. You won't remember me. It will be like you never watched at all. Ethan shook his head. I don't want to forget, he said. She lowered her eyes. Then, you stay, she whispered, and I go free. But you will never be seen again. Not by them, not by anyone. He stared at her, this strange, quiet warrior who had risked everything to protect him. Her body was breaking, her light fading, but she still stood tall, still shielding him from the darkness. You deserve to go free, he said at last, his voice quiet but sure. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide. What? You've been watching too long, Ethan said. You've been alone too long. If someone has to stay, it's me. Her breath caught, her hands clenching into fists. You don't know what you're saying? She whispered fiercely. I know exactly what I'm saying, Ethan said. The Watchers loomed closer, their black forms pressing in, whispering louder now. Time is over. Choose. Ethan took her hand. It was warm, almost burning, and smiled faintly. Go home, he said. Let me watch for a while. She stared at him, her silver eyes shimmering, her body trembling as though torn between anger and gratitude. Then, she whispered softly, you were never supposed to see me human. He chuckled faintly. Too late, he said. The Watchers roared as their dark tendrils shot forward, wrapping around them both. A shy warrior pulled her hand free, her voice breaking as she shouted, you don't look away now, no matter what. Ethan's body burned as the darkness pulled him down. But he didn't look away, not from her, not even when the light shattered completely, when the silence returned. The golden void was gone. The Watchers were gone. And Ethan stood alone in an endless black sky, his body glowing faintly with the same silver light she had once carried. Somewhere far below, he could see the earth, small, blue, and quiet. He raised his hands, now marked with strange glowing scars. And for the first time, he understood what it meant, what she had endured. He turned his gaze outward, to the stars, and he began to watch. Far away, back on Earth, in a quiet corner of the world, a woman with faint silver scars on her skin woke up under the morning sun. She opened her eyes, still, bright but no longer glowing, and whispered softly to the empty air, Thank you, human. She looked up at the sky, where no one else would ever see him, and smiled faintly. For the first time in countless years, she was free. And somewhere beyond the stars, he stood watch, quiet and unseen, his eyes open to the darkness, whispering to himself, Don't watch, human, unless you're ready to never look away.